Baby, I need to tell you something that's been stuck in my chest for far too long. I never thought you were my type. I never thought someone like me would even look twice at someone like you. I was blinded by what I thought attraction meant, by what I thought my type was supposed to look like. I had this image in my mind of who I thought would fit beside me. Someone safe, someone predictable, someone who wouldn't shake the foundation of who I was. And then you walked in, and everything I thought I knew about love collapsed. I never thought you were my type, because you didn't just catch my eye, you caught my soul. You weren't the kind of pretty I could scroll past and forget. You were the kind of beautiful that made my chest tighten, that made me question myself, that made me realize I had been starving without even knowing it. Baby, the truth is, you scared me, because you weren't ordinary, you weren't convenient, you weren't safe. You were the type of woman who makes a man confront himself. And I wasn't ready for that. But then I saw something so small, so simple, and it changed everything. The way you laughed when you didn't think anyone was watching, the way your eyes softened when you were lost in thought, the way you carried yourself, not to impress, not to seduce, but because you knew who you were. That's when it hit me. I had been wrong my whole life. My type wasn't a look, wasn't a checklist, wasn't a body or a face. My type was you, and I didn't even know it until my soul felt it. You see, baby, you're not the kind of love I planned for. You're the kind of love heaven chose for me when I was too blind to choose for myself. You weren't a distraction. You were a mirror. You showed me parts of myself I didn't want to face. You forced me to look at my flaws, my fears, my defenses, and then you loved me anyway. And that's why I ran. That's why I hesitated, because I couldn't understand how someone like you could want someone like me. But even in my confusion, I couldn't stay away. Because every time I tried to look elsewhere, every time I tried to convince myself that someone easier would do, my soul screamed your name. My heart betrayed me, baby. It beat louder every time you walked into the room. I realized then, it wasn't that you weren't my type, it was that you were beyond my type. You were the upgrade I didn't know my heart was waiting for. You were the answer to prayers I never dared to pray. And when I saw that, when I saw you, truly saw you, everything changed. My definition of love changed. My definition of forever changed. I stopped wanting a type. I started wanting a soul. Is the only one I've ever wanted to belong to. So yes, maybe I was foolish enough to once say you weren't my type, but now I know the truth. You're not my type. You're my destiny. You're the storm that washed away everything fake in my life. You're the calm that followed. You're the reason I believe in something bigger than coincidence. And if I have to spend the rest of my life proving it, I'll do it. Because baby, you're not just my type, you're my only type. The only one my soul will ever crave. Baby, when I first saw you, I didn't even understand what my own body was telling me. My mind tried to dismiss it, tried to say, she's not the one you usually go for. She doesn't fit your picture. But my chest, my pulse, my breath, they betrayed me. My whole being reacted like it had found something it had been searching for across lifetimes. And that's when I started realizing Maybe I've been lying to myself all these years. Maybe the type I thought I wanted was only a shield to keep me safe from a love so powerful it could undo me. And baby, that's exactly what you did. You undid me, piece by piece, in ways I didn't even notice at first. In the small things, how I started talking softer when I spoke to you, how I caught myself smiling at random moments, how I began to want to do better, not for the world, but for you. That wasn't just attraction. That wasn't just chemistry. That was my soul recognizing home, even when my pride didn't want to admit it. I used to think type meant someone who checked all my boxes, someone who looked the way I imagined, spoke the way I liked, behaved the way I thought love was supposed to look. But baby, you burned every box I ever created. You made me realize love isn't about fitting into a mold. It's about breaking it. It's about shattering illusions and seeing raw truth. And the raw truth was this: no one ever made me feel the way you did. No one ever made silence so comforting, laughter so healing, presence so divine. You weren't the type of girl I thought I wanted. You were the woman my soul had been praying for, in whispers I didn't even know I was sending up to heaven. And you know what's wild? The moment I admitted that to myself, the world around me shifted. Food tasted different. Music sounded deeper. Even the way I looked in the mirror changed. Because suddenly I didn't just want to survive. I wanted to become someone who could stand beside you without shame. I started wanting to clean up the parts of myself I kept hidden. I started wanting to heal the wounds I used as excuses. You became my reason to grow. And baby, that terrified me. Because growth means leaving behind the boy I was. The boy who thought he wasn't worthy. The boy who thought love had to be complicated. And for the first time, I wanted to shed that boy. For you. Never told you this, but there were nights I lay awake replaying the way you looked at me. Not like I was broken, not like I was dangerous, but like I was worth something. That look, it carved into me. It cut through every lie I believed about myself. It made me want to stop running, but instead of stepping into that truth, I hid. I tried to convince myself you weren't my type, because if I admitted you were, it meant I had to admit I was falling, and I didn't know if I'd survive that fall. But baby, what I've learned since is that falling for you wasn't the end. It was the beginning. It was the first time I let myself truly live. Baby, you weren't my type. You were my transformation, my undoing, my rebirth. And even now, when I close my eyes, I can still see that moment I first saw the real you. Not the face, not the body, not the surface, but the soul that smiled at me like it had been waiting centuries for me to notice. And from that moment on, nothing else mattered. Not the stories I told myself, not the types I thought I wanted, just you. Always you. And maybe that's the cruelest and most beautiful part of this love story. That I almost lost it because I was too blind to see the gift in front of me. But now I see. And I swear to you, baby, I'll never mistake you for anything less than the miracle you are again. Baby, the more I think about it, the more I realize how blind I really was. I told myself you weren't my type because it was easier to believe that than to admit how deeply you shook me. My type used to mean someone I could predict, someone who wouldn't challenge me, someone who would let me stay the same man without asking me to grow. But you were different. You didn't just walk into my life. You walked straight into the places I tried to lock up and forget. You touched wounds I thought were scars, and you reminded me they were still bleeding. And instead of running away from the mess of me, you stayed. You stayed long enough for me to realize that the very thing I thought disqualified you from being my type was the very thing that made you my destiny. I used to look for love in all the wrong places, baby. I thought attraction meant instant fire that fizzled out as quickly as it sparked. I thought connection was about matching habits or hobbies. But you showed me something different. You showed me that real connection is when two souls recognize each other in silence, when the room feels full just because of who's sitting across from you, when nothing about the outside world matters because inside, in that moment, you feel understood. That's what you gave me, and I tried to fight it, to label it, to push it into a corner that made sense. But love like yours doesn't make sense. It makes purpose. And now I see it. Baby, I never told you this, but the night I realized you weren't just someone passing through my story was the night I saw your eyes soften in a way I can't explain. You were laughing, but there was something behind it. Something so deep it stopped me cold. It was like your soul had cracked open for a second, and I saw eternity in you. And I thought, no, this can't be my type. This is too big, too divine, too real. But that was the moment everything shifted, because deep down, I knew this wasn't about type anymore. This was about truth. I used to be scared of truth, baby. Scared because it meant change. It meant stepping out of the safety of patterns and into the unknown. But you were the kind of unknown that felt like home. And that scared me even more. Because what if I wasn't good enough for that kind of love? What if I ruined it? What if I broke you the way I broke everything else I touched? So I lied to myself. I convinced myself you weren't what I wanted. But the more I denied it, the more you haunted me. You haunted my thoughts, my dreams, my silence. And baby, I realize now, it wasn't haunting, it was healing. You were the medicine I was running from. Even my family started to notice. They saw how I softened when you were near, how my temper cooled, how my voice dropped lower, calmer, gentler. They saw the boy who had been reckless start to act like a man who had something to lose. You did that, without even trying. You changed me in ways I can never put into words. And that's when I knew. It was never about whether you were my type. It was about whether I had the courage to become yours. Baby, if I could go back, I'd erase every time I said or even thought you weren't what I was looking for. Because the truth is, I wasn't even looking. I was lost, wandering, chasing shadows. And then you appeared, and suddenly everything else felt small. Everything else felt meaningless. You weren't just different. You were the answer to questions I didn't even know I was asking. So no, you weren't my type. You were my awakening. And now, I can't imagine ever wanting anything less. You're not just the kind of woman a man falls for. You're the kind of woman a man builds a life around. And baby, that's what I want now. Not a type, not a phase, not a fleeting attraction. I want the forever that only your soul carries. Baby, do you know what it feels like to sit in a room full of people and still only search for one face in your mind? That's what you've always been to me. The anchor my heart keeps calling for, even when my pride tried to pretend otherwise. I said you weren't my type because admitting the truth meant surrendering everything I thought I knew about love. And surrender scared me, but the longer I run from the memory of you, the louder my soul screams. It whispers in the silence, it roars in the middle of the night. It aches every time I catch a glimpse of something that reminds me of you. And I've realized, denying you was never about you. It was about me being too weak to face the kind of love that strips a man down to his core and rebuilds him into something new. I see it now, baby. I see how wrong I was to think love had a type, because you didn't just fit into my life. You changed the whole shape of it. You didn't slip into my story like a character. I had to rewrite the whole book the moment you showed up. And at first I fought it. I fought the way your voice lingered in my chest long after you stopped speaking. I fought the way your presence quieted storms inside me I didn't even know I was carrying. I fought the way my mother noticed me becoming softer, more present, more alive whenever your name was near. But every battle I waged against what I felt for you, I lost. Because, baby, how do you fight something eternal? How do you fight the truth that's been written in your spirit since before you even knew what love was? I remember the first time I admitted it to myself. I was alone, no noise, no distractions, just me and the memory of you. And it hit me like thunder. She's not just someone, she's the one. I tried to swallow it down, tried to laugh it off, but my body betrayed me. My hands shook, my chest ached, my eyes burned with tears I didn't even know I was holding back. Because for the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to be seen. You didn't just notice me, you understood me. And that terrified me more than anything else. You saw through the walls, through the bravado, through the mask. You touched the boy inside me, who had spent years pretending he was a man. And you loved him, not conditionally, not cautiously, but wholly. And baby, I wasn't ready for that kind of grace. I thought love was supposed to be earned, bargained for, proven. But you gave it freely, like it was the most natural thing in the world. You gave me something I didn't even know how to hold, and instead of cherishing it, I doubted it. I doubted you. And that's the regret that follows me like a shadow every day. Baby, my mother once told me that sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as disruptions, and maybe that's what you were. My divine disruption. You came into my life and ruined all my illusions. You ruined the lies I told myself about who I wanted and what I deserved. You ruined the excuses I used to keep love at a distance, and in that ruin you built something new. You built a vision of love so deep, so honest, so eternal, that even now, when you're gone, it still shapes me. I know now, you were never just a type. You were never supposed to fit into some category in my mind. You were the exception to everything I thought I knew. You were the answer to every prayer I didn't have the courage to pray. And baby, I'll spend the rest of my days honoring that truth. Even if it's only in whispers, even if it's only in memories, even if it's only in the silence. Baby, I kept telling myself you weren't my type. Because admitting you were meant, admitting I had finally met the one person who could undo me. At first I tried to fight it. I told myself you were too different, too unpredictable, too real. But deep down, I knew the truth. You weren't just different. You were everything I didn't know I was waiting for. You weren't the kind of love I planned for. You were the kind of love that hit me like a storm and left me standing in awe. You weren't the kind of pretty that fades when the lights go out. You were the kind of beautiful that made my chest ache, the kind that made my soul whisper, "Don't lose this." I never thought you were my type, baby, because I had been chasing shadows, and then you showed me what light looked like. I started noticing the smallest things, the way your laughter carried warmth even when you were hurting, the way your silence wasn't empty, it was full of meaning, the way you looked at me like you already knew the man I could become, even when I didn't believe in myself. That's when I realized my type had never been about appearances. It had never been about the surface. It was always about the soul. And your soul, it changed me. Do you know what it did to me the first time I saw you defend me without words? The first time you let love speak louder than anger? Baby, I couldn't stop thinking about it. It made me realize that I had been measuring love the wrong way my whole life. I thought love was about fireworks, about passion that burned fast. But you showed me love is firewood, steady, lasting, able to keep someone warm through the coldest nights. You weren't my type, because I thought type meant someone who wouldn't challenge me. But you did. You challenged me to grow, to soften, to become more than the broken boy I used to be. And that scared me, baby, because when someone makes you want to change, you realize how much power they truly have in your life. And you had that power from the very beginning.